Joining me via Skype, Marcus Papadopoulos. He's the editor of Politics First. And here in the studio with me, our very own Robert Carter with analysis and public opinion of the ongoing crisis in the Middle East. And let me begin with you, Marcus Papadopoulos. If you listen to the American president's statement, what stood out to you the most?
Well, I believe that the Iranian missile attack has made the Americans feel somewhat disconcerted. And I'm of the opinion that you could see that concern during Donald Trump's statement, because the Iranian missile attack demonstrated very clearly and very loudly to planners and policymakers in Washington that Iran has developed missile technology to such an extent that Iranian missiles are now able to penetrate, to evade American missile defense systems in Iraq, and I strongly believe in other parts of the Middle East. And on top of that, I think the Americans will be doubly worried, because I hold the view that if Iran wanted to inflict a grievous loss on the American military in Iraq, or indeed elsewhere in the Middle East, then it is more than capable of doing so. So I think in light of that, and in light of how Iran has demonstrated to America and to the rest of the world that it has missile technology that can penetrate American missile defense systems, and bearing in mind America is a military superpower, then I think Donald Trump, his administration, and the entire American establishment will be quite alarmed. And any plans that the Americans may have for taking some sort of military action against Iran will have to take into consideration now the Iranian missile attack on that American military base in Iran.
Let me go back to Marcus. And Marcus, is this the so-called let me find the word for it in a second or two. Is this the famous wagging the dog moment? What happened in the late 90s with President Clinton embroiled with the Monica Lewinsky scandal, launching attacks in Afghanistan?
Well, there's a remarkable similarity by what happened in 1999 and what has happened in 2020. Because at the beginning of 1999, Bill Clinton was facing impeachment. And how did he distract American public opinion and indeed opinion on Capitol Hill away from his possible impeachment? Well, he deployed NATO to start bombing Serbia, or as it was then, the Federal Republic of Yugoslavia, a brutal, malicious bombing campaign which lasted for 3 months and resulted in NATO dropping uranium on Serbian civilians. Now, fast forward to early 2020, Donald Trump, the current American president, is also facing possible impeachment. How has he distracted American public opinion away from that? How has he attempted to unify the American public opinion behind him? How has he tried to distract what is going on Capitol Hill away from his own problems? He has gone after a historic enemy of America. And of course, I'm talking about Iran. And we need to remember this, that for 41 years, the Americans have sought to destroy the Iranian Revolution. Why? Because prior to the Iranian Revolution, Iran, under the Shah, was an emphatic client state of America. And one of the greatest achievements of the Iranian Revolution was that it returned Iran, this ancient, magnificent, cultured country. It returned this country to the Iranian people. And that is why the Americans have never forgiven the Iranian Revolution. And I believe that one of the reasons why in 41 years the Americans have not embarked on some sort of military operation against Iran, be it a bombing campaign or an all-out military invasion of Iran, is because the Americans saw what happened during the Iraq-Iran war. Following the Iraqi invasion of Iran, millions of Iranians volunteered for the front line. And we saw millions of Iranian civilians come out onto the streets in towns and cities across Iran to mourn the murder of General Soleimani. So the Americans look at that, what happened during the war in the 1980s, and look at how many Iranians came out onto the streets in recent days to mourn the death of General Soleimani. And they will conclude that if America launched a military invasion of Iran, then millions of Iranians would volunteer for the front line. And given that, the Americans would not be able to succeed in subduing Iran unless, of course, unless they were prepared to use conventional nuclear weapons on the battlefield in Iran. And Iran is not Libya. Iran is not Iraq. The Iranians are the descendants of the Persian empires. They're the heirs to Cyrus, to Xerxes, to Darius. The Iranians are a remarkably patriotic, enlightened, cultured people, and they are natural fighters. And whatever the politics, whatever the political ideologies of Iranians are, they always unite when Iran is threatened. And we have seen that in the last few days following the murder of General Soleimani. And London, where we are talking today, London is a safer city because of General Soleimani's defeat of ISIS in Lebanon, Syria, and Iraq. And my word, if the general had not been successful in defeating ISIS in those aforementioned countries, then the Wahhabi
we'll come back and talk about London in a little bit, Marcus. And Marcus, thanks for standing by. I promised that we would come back and talk about the UK. In comparison with the European allies, the United Kingdom has been more supportive of the US's actions. Why do you think that is?
Well, if I can put it quite crudely, Britain is nothing more than simply a lackey of the United States. Whenever the Americans take some sort of action in the world, be it political action or economic action, or indeed military action, then London demonstrates to America its unwavering support. And that has been the case historically. That was the case in the former Yugoslavia, that was the case in Iraq, that was the case in Libya, and also that has been to a lesser extent, however, but also that has been the case in Syria. So no one should really be surprised by the remarks of Boris Johnson, nor the remarks of Dominic Raab. And I must say this as well, that there are so many malicious lies being put out by both British politicians and British mainstream journalists regarding Iran in general, but also General Soleimani. Now, these journalists who work for British newspapers such as The Times or the Daily Telegraph or The Sun or The Guardian know next to nothing about Iran, General Soleimani, and the Middle East. But then they don't need to know anything. They are paid to echo the narrative of the British government, or more specifically, the British establishment, because British mainstream media, both broadcast and print, is neither free nor independent nor credible. It is a part of the British establishment. That is why whenever America takes action in the world, or whenever Britain takes some form of action in the world, then broadcast media in the UK and print media in the UK are completely supportive of those actions.